Thank you, Andy. I'm not going to apologise for the bright pink because I'm never normally allowed to have pink in. So yeah, I'm not apologising for the pink because I'm never normally allowed to have it. So today, for women, we're being girly. So basically, I've been asked today to speak to you about the participation of females in research. I'm a PhD student in the lab of Professor Flaviana Georginis at the University of Leicester. To start off with, I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about my research journey so far and how I've got involved in Parkinson's disease. So as a child, I've always been interested in science, loved it from a really young age, always had microscope sets and stuff for Christmas, but there were times at school where I didn't like science, and if it wasn't for parental support and support from teachers, I wouldn't have ended up in science. So I studied at my A-levels in biology, chemistry, maths and PE, and particularly chemistry and maths and PE, they were very heavily dominated by males. It didn't bother me, but I can see that it could put some girls off taking these subjects. So I studied these at A-level. After school, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I thought I'd just continue studying the subject I loved, and that was biology. So that led me to go on to University of Portsmouth and study biology. My first year tutor here was a young female scientist. She'd just been awarded her first fellowship, and I think that really encouraged me having a female role model to aspire to. So I then had my third year undergraduate project in the lab, and that was looking at sort of brain development, early neuron differentiation. I still didn't know what I wanted to do here, but I loved being in the lab and I loved the atmosphere that was provided. So my supervisor at the time, Dr. Frank Schubert, you can see him in the picture with us graduating in the lab. And he basically talked me into carrying on with the research, even though I didn't think I was good enough or could be able to do it. So I ended up in his lab for a year and really loved it. I loved all the conferences that I was able to go to. And now that's led me on to now. So when I was researching my master's, it wasn't directly linked to disease. While I was doing my master's, I realised I wanted to get into brain diseases, specifically neurodegenerative diseases. So that's why I've ended up in the lab of Flav Georginis. And now I'm using the fruit fly to model Parkinson's disease, directly looking at genetics involved. I don't have time to talk to you about all my project with everything else, but essentially I'm looking at one gene, it's called RAB39B, which has been identified as a cause of Parkinson's disease. So to just talk about the great scientists in history, because there have been quite a few of them, if you were asked to think of a scientist, who would you think of? And I would imagine a lot of you would be thinking of male scientists. You've got your Isaac Newton, Galileo, Darwin, Einstein, and Hawking. Now I want you to get rid of that image. And so I want to look at these images. And I'm not sure so many of you would be able to identify who these females are. But all of them have contributed massively to science. So the earliest one's Caroline Herschel. She was the first female to discover a comet. And at that time, it was a huge achievement. Marie Curie, who's one of my female heroes, she was the first person to win a Nobel Prize in 2 subjects, not just the first female, a first ever person. And her contribution to science has been great for modern medicine with X-rays and cancer treatment. Rosalind Franklin is also one of my heroes, and she contributed massively to the understanding of the molecular structures of the DNA. And if it wasn't for her work, a lot of the progress in science today wouldn't be happening. And then you've got Dorothy Hodgkin, who also made great contributions to medicine. And Anne McLaren was the first officer of the Royal Society, and that was after 330 years. So it took 330 years for females to really be taken seriously in science. So yeah, I want to just show you that females are needed in science. They make huge contributions. That's why we need to be here. So because females make up roughly 50% of the population, the research needs to be relevant to women, and the outputs of research need to help them as well as males. So the problem being so far is that until the 1990s, the majority of clinical trials just used male participants, and due to the differences in the sexes with genetics, hormones, and biological pathways, it's quite clear that if you study something in a male, it's not going to have the same output as in a female. So there was a study done, presented in the States in 2000, where 10 drugs that had been withdrawn from use because they were causing dangerous, harmful side effects, and it was actually shown that this was only in the women that it was happening, so which is showing that females need to be represented in research. Another study, interesting, showed that it's not just the participants that need to be gender represented for both genders. Just having male researchers can stress out rodents in lab studies. So you definitely need to be aware of gender representation, both research and clinical participants. Now the National Institute of Health is trying to balance this gender used in studies. So in cell and animal studies, they're now aware that they need to use female and male sex subjects. Gendered innovations, it's an international collaboration where they're basically trying to stop these problems happening and getting the research correct in the first place by taking females into account. And as I'm sure you're all aware, and as has been discussed so far, the gender differences in Parkinson's disease are also key. So why do women need to be involved with PD research? So women have got extra hurdles to come across. 5 to 10% of Parkinson's patients are under 40. So this means that a lot of female patients are going to be suffering with menstruation symptoms and also having pregnancies. So these extra hormonal issues are combining these, adding extra things that they need to deal with. And it's been shown that so PD patients, their period symptoms can be worsened, their Parkinson's patients are worsened during their menstruation, and they have reduced effectiveness of their medications. So this really highlights why women need to get involved in the research. Female researchers, I think, need to be playing the role here as well, because they would be asking different questions based on their life experiences. Also, clinicians and medical professionals need to be females, because I think they would be asking different questions and the patients themselves would be more comfortable speaking to them about these issues. Also, another completely different topic, but women are 50% more likely to become a carer than men. That means they really need to be concerned about the treatments and getting involved with the research, even the fundraising, not just the clinical trials themselves. So what can we do to increase female participation? We have International Women's Day, so we celebrate that in our department. So we celebrate all the women and just celebrate and support each other for our research. Our outreach events for children in schools, so there's a picture there where we've gone to a primary school and they've visited us and been able to extract DNA from a banana. And I think having females there to encourage the girls and see that we're in science might encourage them to think of it as a career path. I think also girls are more likely to be discouraged by taking the harder subjects because they don't want to fail, but they need to know if they enjoy it, just to go for it and work hard, and they'll do well at it. Collaborative conferences are really important in the field of research. So I've just returned from the ADPD conference in Lisbon, and the science talks that I went to there were incredible. There's so much research going on, and you really need to be together as scientists to kind of know what's going on in the field. And then obviously more events like this for everyone to share their ideas and experiences. And then hopefully with combining these things, we will get closer to finding treatments for men and women, obviously. And yeah, thank you very much for listening.
You did good.